Hey y'all, my name is Jordan and welcome back to the Scooter Woodworks channel. This is episode 4 of my build for the Great Guitar build off. And if you've been playing along at home and watching the videos, you'll know that the project I'm working on is a quilted maple top Stratocaster style guitar. Where we left off in episode 3 was finishing up the body. And in this episode, we're going to take some time to work on the electronic components. I'm going to show you how I wind the pickups for the guitar, and then also how I solder all the components together on the scratch plate. So, stick around. And I'm also going to be showing you how I did the fretwork on the neck for this guitar in this video as well. But before we get there, here you see me pressing the pole pieces into the flatwork for this pickup that I'm going to be building. This is my first time building pickups. One of the things I thought that would set me apart on the Great Guitar Build-Off was building my own pickups here, but man, I'm seeing people who are building their own flat work and building their own bridges and everything, and so that's not going to necessarily set me apart here. But once you get all the pole pieces pressed in, you get a bobbin like that right there. And the next step is to pot it in lacquer, and that helps provide some insulation and also makes the flat work a little bit more durable. And so here I'm beginning the winding process. And so I'm going to talk in real time about what I'm doing here. I don't know how much this audio I can use because I'm trying to do this at my kitchen table with family coming in and out. But basically what I'm doing is putting the wire, getting it started by soldering one end, the start, to one of the eyelets on the flat work. And then I use some double-sided sticky tape, some excellent stuff to attach it to my homemade winder here. And this winder I built off some plans by Chase's workshop over on his YouTube channel. If you haven't checked out his channel, you should. He's got some neat projects. And so the wire I'm using is 43 gauge form bar. And my understanding is that form bar is the kind of wire that was used by the folks when they were making the original pickups at the Fender factory back in the day, like in the late 50s and early 60s. But they would use 42 gauge. I'm using 43 gauge. I don't know why. I just decided I'd order 43 gauge. Sometimes my philosophy about this stuff is, you know, you don't have to replicate things exactly like we've done in the day. So right here you see the pickup winder working in real time, and now you see it sped up so I can get through this process. Now, everything that I learned about how to wind a pickup that you see me doing in this video comes from a video by Skylar Dean about winding his vintage style Strat pickups, and I'll be sure to leave a link to his video. 7,700 turn, 7,600 turn, 76, 70, 76, 69. We're gonna stop there. Go, 1, 2, 3. Resolder this bad boy on. .72, not bad. Lead wires. I think these lead wires are black and white. I am not using cloth wire. I'm using El Cheapo hookup wire, 22 gauge stranded, and I think that this is fine wire. We have pickups. So the next step for me was preparing the scratch plate for the pickups. I had already installed the potentiometers onto the scratch plate and the switch. And so I'm just running the wires where they need to go. I'm giving you snippets of the wiring diagram that I'm following to help me out with this, because this is where I need the most help, is understanding sort of where the wires go. And I still don't always understand the whys of that, especially with tone pots. But
the wiring diagram is one that was published by Seymour Duncan. It's all over the internet, and that's where this image comes from here. So, you know, the important thing to know while you're doing this is making sure that you pre-tin your wire, pre-tin your lugs, and that makes things a whole lot simpler going together. And I'm using the same wire to wire together these components that I used to make the lead wires for the pickups. So here's where I am running the different wires from the switch to the tone pots. I had previously run the wires from the switch to the volume pot. Now I'm putting in the capacitor. I'm using just a cheap capacitor. It's a 0.022 microfarad capacitor. And then the last step of this is me running the ground wires all the way through. I'm not following any particular color code except to use black as ground. Color ultimately doesn't matter. Color is mostly a courtesy to make sure that people who check up on your work afterward can know what things are. And especially with a low voltage circuit like this, the stakes are pretty low. You'll just infuriate rather than hurt the person who's working on this circuit afterward. But I do try to be consistent and have the grounds as black and red as the signal. And here's the finished job.
Just kind of plop them in. I think that's good. And there's our potted pickup. They're that vintage pickups like from the 50s and 60s made by Fender, like these single coil style pickups, and the humbuckers made by Gibson. They were not wax potted. Wax potting, and there's tons of people more knowledgeable about this on YouTube and on the internet than me, but wax potting came into fad because people like Eddie Van Halen figured out that you get this interference called microphonics from slight movements in the coil when you're playing, you know, very loud amplified guitars with high gain, like people like Eddie Van Halen do. And so he figured out a method of keeping the coil still, and that's potting it in wax. And it's kind of a thing now where it's just kind of expected. It's not necessary. And this is the first set of pickups I'm making, and I'm doing it because I'm not confident that I've got the coils as tight as they could be as I was winding, you know? And if this helps keep the coils from moving, then this is good, I assume. So I figure it can't hurt, and it might help. So I'm doing it. It didn't take that much extra effort to do it. It's mainly a cost in time, and I was busy doing other things while I waited for the wax to melt. So the pickups have cooled from where they were wax potted, and now I'm going to reassemble them back into the pickguard so that they can be wired to the 5-way switch. The neck hot goes here, the middle hot goes there, and the bridge hot goes there, and all the grounds go there. So let's do it to it.
One thing you might notice with the wire coloring here is that each pickup has a different color wire. I used yellow for the neck, I used red for the middle, and I used white for the bridge, just for easy identification. There's not a requirement about that. It's just something I wanted to do.
loosening everything up there for a minute, but I think it's good now. Yeah, that's good. Toy, like a toy. All right. So, there's our completed wired up scratch plate and wiring harness for this Stratocaster. Okay, so while we're waiting for the finish on the body to cure, the neck though has already cured since I stopped putting true oil coats on it before I stopped putting true oil coats on the body. And I'm going to do the fretwork now. So basically I'm going to level and dress the frets. I've already got some masking tape and masked off the fretboard so I don't mar the fretboard or you know, scuff it up or get any of the fret dust on it, because that would be difficult to clean off. It'd also be difficult to get off the maple. It is finished, and maybe it won't be that hard, but you know, it's masked off. So the first thing I want to do is make sure the neck is straight, because it would be kind of lame to level the frets on a neck that's not straight. And I got to make sure I get the right scale here. It does look really good. So this neck has been pretty stable and stayed pretty straight for me. So don't need this now. So the next step is to get some color in the form of a Sharpie or one of these Milwaukee ink Zol pens on the frets, because we want to be able to see our progress as we level them. The fatter the tip on the pen, the better, because you get better coverage. For what it's worth, this is one of these jobs that I would not use cheap painter's tape for, because I have marked fretboards with my black marker and been sad, because it's not really a good way to get in there that close to the fret and clean it out. At least not for me. I haven't found one. That happened on the very first guitar I built. Last one to mark up. Okay. So with all these marked now, what that means is it'll be easy for me to see places where the sandpaper has touched and taken some material off. And so I know then that when I have gone over the frets and a little bit of the ink has been taken off over all the frets, they're all at the same level, theoretically, or should be. So the way that I have been leveling frets is with a level. And you can get specialty tools, you know, that do this, fret leveling beams, etc. I just got a 2-foot level, and it's the right length. And you know, if you get a good machine level like this, it's good and straight. And what I do is I get some double sticky tape, and I put some sandpaper on it. As far as what grit to start at, I start at 220. You don't want to start with anything more aggressive than that. There are different opinions, I believe, on guitar YouTube about where you should start. And I'm not going to say one's right or wrong, because I'm relatively new at this. But that's 400. But I will start at 220. Or so I'm going to use the level, and that'll get me there pretty quick. Then I'll use the progressively finer grits after the frets have been dressed and recrowned to get them going. So pretty straightforward. Put down some tape. Ooh, that's not going to stick good. It's got sawdust on it. So put down some tape. Stick this on there. Utility knife. Cut that strip off. Another thing you'll notice is that guitar building YouTube is all about this super glue and masking tape trick.
double-sided tape, ride or die for me. You just got to get the right stuff. I buy mine from Taylor Tool Works. It's good stuff. I think this is the stuff now that the Texas Toast guys are using. But I found it independently of them from the Cat's Moses Woodworking channel. So, got a nifty little handle right here. Lay it on the fretboard and gently. They're all apply a lot of pressure. Just let the beam do the work. So we look at the progress, and I can already see where the high spots are down here and near this end. And right in here, there's some places in the middle it hasn't taken a lot off. I'm gonna get the fret rocker, check that now. Okay, so the way a fret rocker works is it has 5 sides of varying lengths. You lay it across 3 of the frets, and if it rocks, you know that the one on either side is high or low. Good. Good. Okay, there's a little bit of rock here, so this one in the middle is high. So we know that needs to be worked on a little bit. So I still got some high spots. I'm gonna keep running it over with this 220 grit paper. But first, all right, I'm happy with this. This is, my dad would say, close enough for government work. So, we can set this aside for now. We can set this aside for now. We're done leveling frets. The next step is to recrown them, because once you level them, you have a very flat surface on the fret, and that flat surface makes for uncomfortable playing, okay? And so you gotta round it off again. And so what we'll do, then to help us see how to crown it, is we cover the frets again with marker. Okay, so I'll move the camera in a little bit closer. And what you're trying to do when you recrown frets is gently file away on either side of the fret, kind of creating facets the same way you shape a neck, and then round up. And when you have that little thin strip in the middle of the marker, then you know you've got a nice crown on the fret, and your work there is done. All right, I am happy with that. Okay, so now that I've got the frets recrowned, the next step is to round the ends over to make it a little bit more comfortable to play. I've already beveled them earlier when I pressed them in, but that was all I did to the ends. Now with the frets recrowned, we want to round the ends over, and that will make them more comfortable to play. I'll try this one. And then back this way. All right, that feels good to me. Okay, so now that I've got the frets leveled, recrowned, and have rounded over the ends, the last step is to sand and polish them. So that way we get the file and sandpaper marks out of them, and also leave them nice and shiny and also comfortable to play. I'm going to start with progressively finer grits of sandpaper to work on getting the scratches out. I'm going to start with 400,
You just roll it over my fingers and then go to 600, 800, 1000, 1500, and then finally steel wool. So we'll just start like this. And then we have, before we move to polishing, 4-0 steel wool. If you're doing this to a neck that is attached to a body that has pickups in it, mask off your pickups because they have magnets in them, and it'll pick up anything that sheds off steel wool. And steel wool will shed. I'm going to get my knockoff Dremel and polish the frets, and that'll be the last step in this fret work. Y'all, that's pretty. Even if I did do it, and I don't proclaim that this is the best fret job in the world, I'm gonna be still relatively a beginner with this, but you know, I'm real pleased. I think my buddy will be too. So the only work left to do on this neck would be to mount the tuners, bolt it to the body, and do the nut, install the nut. And that's, you know, stuff that I won't do until the body is ready to go. So we're just kind of waiting on the finish hardening up on the body so we can buff that out. So that's going to do it for part 4 of this build for the Great Guitar Build Off. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I'm having fun working on this guitar and chronicling my efforts to share with y'all. So if you are enjoying it, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up and give me a like on this video. If you want to follow along with the rest of the build, then please make sure that you hit the subscribe button. If you want to be notified, you ring that bell. So y'all take care.